In the spring of 1943, Europe stood at a turning point. The Axis powers still held much of the continent in their grasp. German divisions occupied France, Poland, Norway, and the Low Countries. Italy remained a loyal partner to Hitler's regime, though its armies had suffered defeat after defeat. To the east, the Soviet Union was clawing back territory at a terrible cost. And in the south, British and American troops had at last secured North Africa after months of desert warfare. The next step in the Allied plan was clear. To strike into Europe, they would have to cross the Mediterranean. The most logical target was the island of Sicily. It was the gateway to Italy, controlling access between the eastern and western Mediterranean. From Sicily, the Allies could invade the Italian mainland, force Mussolini from power, and open a new front against Germany. But logic was also the enemy. The Germans could see this plan as clearly as the Allies could. If they reinforced Sicily heavily, the invasion could become a bloodbath. British intelligence therefore faced a single, daunting question. Could they persuade Hitler to believe the blow would fall elsewhere? Within the shadowed corridors of London's Admiralty, in rooms thick with cigarette smoke and exhaustion, officers of the 20 Committee group, charged with strategic deceptions, searched for an answer. They understood that modern war was fought not only with tanks and aircraft, but with information, rumors, and imagination. Their challenge was to manipulate the enemy's belief. Among them were two men whose names would later become linked forever with one of the most improbable operations in the history of espionage. Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montague of the Royal Navy, a barrister in civilian life, and Flight Lieutenant Charles Cholmondeley of MI5, a tall, eccentric officer with a fondness for unconventional ideas. Together, they conceived an operation that would deceive the German High Command through the use of a single dead body. The concept was not entirely new. In the early months of the war, a young naval officer named Ian Fleming-Later, the creator of James Bond, had circulated a memo suggesting that a corpse, suitably disguised and carrying false papers, could be allowed to fall into enemy hands. The idea was shelved at the time, considered too grotesque and impractical. But by 1943, the need for deception outweighed any sense of distaste. The proposal was revived under the code name Operation Mincemeat. The logic behind it was as cold as it was brilliant. If a body dressed as a British officer were to wash ashore in a neutral country, apparently drowned while in transit, and if that body were carrying documents of high importance, then the enemy might accept those documents as genuine. Spain, nominally neutral but riddled with pro-German sympathizers, offered the ideal setting. German intelligence agents operated there with considerable freedom. If the corpse were found on a Spanish beach, the papers would almost certainly reach the Obver, the German intelligence service, within days. Yet an idea, however daring, required meticulous execution. Montague and Cholmondeley knew that every detail must withstand scrutiny. The corpse would need a convincing identity, complete with uniform, wallet, photographs, and personal effects. The official papers had to appear authentic in every respect. A single inconsistency might expose the deception and hand the enemy a propaganda victory. The planners therefore approached their task with the precision of surgeons. Their first obstacle was practical: where to find a body suitable for such a purpose. It had to appear to have died in an air crash or drowning, without visible wounds that might arouse suspicion. In the grim aftermath of wartime London, there were many unclaimed bodies, but few that met all requirements. After careful inquiries and the quiet cooperation of a pathologist, they located a man who had died recently from ingesting rat poison. His name was Glyndwr Michael, a Welsh labourer, homeless and unknown. He had no family to claim him, and no record that would later link his remains to the operation. In death, he would become the perfect secret agent. From that moment, Glyndwr Michael ceased to exist. In his place, the planners created Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. Every aspect of Major Martin's life was constructed with painstaking realism. His service record identified him as a staff officer, temporarily attached to combined operations. He was given a photograph of a fiancée, Pam, a secretary whose picture was borrowed from a file in MI5. Love letters were placed in his wallet. together with a receipt for an engagement ring, a few theatre stubs, and an overdraft notice from his bank. His pockets contained keys, a pencil stub, and a ticket for a London club. Each item was selected to reinforce the illusion of an ordinary young officer, recently engaged, busy with duty and personal concerns. The centerpiece of the deception, however, would be the contents of the locked briefcase, chained to his wrist. Inside were 2 carefully forged letters between senior Allied commanders. The first, from Lieutenant General Archibald Nye, the Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, to General Harold Alexander in North Africa, referred to upcoming operations in the Mediterranean. Its wording suggested that the Allies intended to invade Greece and possibly Sardinia, while a feint would be staged toward Sicily. A second letter, more casual in tone, reinforced the same impression. Together, they would present 2 German analysts a coherent narrative that Sicily was not the true target. As these documents were drafted and redrafted, Montagu insisted that they contain minor imperfections, typographical errors, colloquial phrasing, even smudges to make them appear authentic. They were not to look like official orders, but like genuine correspondence between men who trusted each other. The aim was to convince the reader that he was intercepting reality, not forgery. Meanwhile, the corpse itself was prepared for its role. Medical officers examined it to ensure it could plausibly have drowned at sea. It was dressed in a Royal Marines uniform, complete with rank insignia, identity discs, and standard-issue boots. Personal papers were distributed in the pockets. The name William Martin was engraved on a silver identity bracelet. A photograph of Pam was tucked into the wallet. When all was ready, the body was stored in a sealed container, filled with dry ice, and kept under naval guard. Only a handful of officers knew the true purpose of the operation. In late April 1943, the corpse was transferred to the submarine HMS Seraph, commanded by Lieutenant Norman Jewell. The crew were informed only that they were to carry out a mission of the highest secrecy under Admiralty orders. The container was loaded aboard at Greenock, Scotland, and the vessel slipped silently into the Atlantic. Over the next few days, Seraph made her way south through rough seas, toward the coast of Spain. At dawn, on the 29th of April, near the port of Huelva, the submarine surfaced. The sea was calm, the sky pale with early light. The crew assembled on deck as Jewell read a short passage from the 23rd Psalm. Then the container was opened, and the body now clad as Major Martin was gently committed to the water. A life jacket kept it buoyant, ensuring it would drift toward the Spanish shore. Attached to its wrist was the briefcase containing the false papers. As Seraph submerged and vanished beneath the waves, the deception entered its final phase. The fate of nations now depended on whether the body of a homeless Welshman, transformed into a fictional officer, would be found, and whether the Germans would believe the story he carried. Within hours, fishermen from Huelva discovered the body floating near the shore. They reported it to local authorities, who in turn contacted the Spanish Navy. News of the discovery traveled swiftly through unofficial channels to German agents operating in the region. For Montagu and Cholmondeley, waiting anxiously in London, the next few days would reveal whether their elaborate creation would achieve its purpose or collapse in failure. On the morning of the 30th of April, 1943, the waves along the coast of Huelva carried with them a strange and haunting sight. The body of a man in British uniform lay half submerged among the rocks. Fishermen, accustomed to the brutal debris of wartime, approached with caution. They found a briefcase attached to the man's wrist by a chain, the contents sealed and undisturbed. To them, it seemed the unfortunate victim of an air crash or shipwreck. They brought their discovery ashore and notified the Spanish authorities. Huelva was a small port city on Spain's southern coast, far from the battlefronts but not untouched by war. Spain, under General Franco, maintained a precarious neutrality, tolerating German intelligence officers under diplomatic cover. The British had chosen the location deliberately. Knowing information from a British officer's body there would reach the Germans. Spanish naval authorities took possession of the corpse and briefcase. The documents were forwarded to a local naval judge. British diplomats in Madrid acted under orders to inquire about a missing Royal Marines officer named Major William Martin. Their intent was to add authenticity by showing concern. The Spanish confirmed a British body had been found, and papers were under investigation, but remained non-committal. Meanwhile, the German Abwehr intelligence in Spain took keen interest. Adolf Kloss, their senior representative, maintained good ties with Spanish authorities, and German agents soon secured copies of the briefcase documents. These were sent to Berlin through channels. The trap was working. In London, Montagu and Cholmondeley waited anxiously. The plan depended on the Germans believing what they found. Coded signals from British embassies in Spain showed the body had been handled. Germans knew, and diplomatic pressure to retrieve the briefcase was rebuffed. Yet the question remained, had the documents been opened? Spanish authorities eventually returned the briefcase, claiming contents were undisturbed. Forensic exams in London showed otherwise. Letters showed signs of opening and resealing. A secret eyelash inside one envelope was missing. To Montagu, proof the deception reached its target in Berlin. German reaction followed swiftly. By early May, enemy communications decoded by Ultra showed shifts in German strategy. Hitler's command strengthened Balkan defenses, moved troops to Greece and Crete, and downgraded Sicily defenses. The deception had taken root, fooling German intelligence into believing Greece not. Sicily was the real Allied target. The Abwehr regarded the discovery as a remarkable intelligence coup. Their analysts believed the documents genuine beyond doubt. Casual letters and plausible details convinced them the material was authentic. The information was presented to the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, the German High Command, and Hitler was briefed. He accepted the conclusions unquestioningly. Hitler, prone to seeing elaborate Allied conspiracies, regarded the find as confirmation of his own instincts, that the Balkans, not Sicily, were the Allies' next target. Thus, the corpse of Major William Martin reshaped the enemy's perception of reality. Aligning perfectly with British troop movements and radio intercepts, suggesting an attack on Greece. British deception units orchestrated false radio rumours, and double agents repeated these false claims, making Operation Mincemeat the cornerstone of a broader campaign called Operation Barclay. To the Germans, the evidence seemed overwhelming, convincing them to reinforce the Dodecanese Islands and transfer Luftwaffe squadrons to Greece. Even Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, recalled from Tunisia, was assigned to inspect defences along the Adriatic coast. These movements diluted Axis strength in Sicily, where the real attack would soon come. In London, Montagu and Cholmondeley watched with satisfaction, but remained cautious, fearing the deception might unravel before the Allied invasion. Mid-May intercepts revealed a German message praising a certain Major Martin and the intelligence from his body as valuable. The Allies then knew the bait had been swallowed, and the documents accepted as genuine. Meanwhile, the corpse was buried with full military honours in Huelva, the British consul unaware of its true identity. The tombstone read, William Martin, Major Royal Marines. Died the 24th of April 1943. Beloved son of John Glyndwr, Martin and Antonia Martin of Cardiff, Wales. His true story remained secret to all but a few in British intelligence for nearly 50 years. While the body rested, German field reports indicated growing concern over Greece and the Balkans. Hitler ordered reinforcements for Yugoslavia and western Greece, and suspected Sicily's invasion was a diversion. This belief held through the build-up to the July invasion, when German and Italian forces on Sicily were insufficiently prepared, with weak air defences and distant reserves. The island fell to the Allies, opening the path to Italy. For Montagu and Cholmondeley, the success brought relief. The deception had not only succeeded, but changed the war's course in the Mediterranean, sparing thousands of Allied lives in a costly frontal assault. The mission remained secret, known to only a few. Later deception operations built on Mincemeat's example, using false information to mislead the enemy. The concept of planting credible false information became central in Allied strategy, used again to mislead about the DAT landings, timing, and location. Operation Mincemeat was unique in weaponizing a human body as a silent messenger to carry a convincing lie, profoundly reshaping enemy planning at the highest level in World War II. By summer's end, as Allies advanced up Italy and Germany's forces reeled, Montagu and Cholmondeley reflected on the chance and calculation behind their success. A homeless Welshman, unknown in life, became in death a tool of strategy. His story stayed hidden for decades, but within British naval intelligence, Major William Martin was a byword for flawless deception. As the summer of 1943 drew to a close, the Allied campaign in the Mediterranean had achieved decisive momentum. Sicily had fallen, opening the road to the Italian mainland. Mussolini's government was toppled, and the Italian army was in disarray. Strategic planners in London and Washington were satisfied, though the triumph was measured among those who orchestrated the deception. Operation Mincemeat had worked, but in a manner few could publicly acknowledge. The meticulous care in preparing William Martin's corpse, forged documents, and personal effects rewarded the plan. German intelligence shifted divisions to Greece and Sardinia, leaving Sicily vulnerable. This single deception influenced enemy forces across the war theatre, saving countless lives and altering the Mediterranean campaign's course. Beyond operational success lay moral questions. Glyndwr Michael, the man used, had no knowledge of his role. His body became Major William Martin, with identity discs, photos, personal letters, and false strategic documents. His existence was erased and replaced with a fictional narrative designed to deceive the Axis' powerful military apparatus. The ethical weight of this choice troubled those who executed the plan. Ewan Montagu later acknowledged discomfort using a corpse as espionage tool, and Cholmondeley recognized tension between strategy and human dignity. Yet, in total war, such compromises were seen as unavoidable, justified by saving thousands of lives in costly assaults. In Berlin, the impact persisted. Hitler focused troops on Greece, diverting them from Sicily and mainland Italy. The German High Command was deceived by the operation's artful detail, demonstrating the profound effect of information manipulation on war's course. The Allies' precise orchestration exploited enemy biases, mastering strategic deception that served as a future model. Following Mincemeat's success, its principles informed further Allied initiatives, including Operation Bodyguard and Normandy landings planning. Allied officers found credibility in deception rested on authentic personal effects, plausible correspondence, and narratives aligned to enemy expectations. Mincemeat was a proof of concept reshaping thinking on psychological and strategic deception. William Martin's story remained secret for decades, known to few in British naval intelligence. Glyndwr Michael's unacknowledged contribution highlighted espionage's paradox: great service hidden, feats dependent on ordinary individuals erased by circumstance. In 1953, Ewan Montagu published The Man Who Never Was, revealing Mincemeat's details while protecting sensitive methods. The book chronicled the mission's planning and execution, captivating readers with its tactical brilliance, ethical dilemmas, and Martin's fictional life. Operation Mincemeat's enduring significance lies in demonstrating information as a warfare tool, shaping enemy perceptions to achieve objectives without direct combat. It embodies a military doctrine principle, valuing manipulation as much as force. Ultimately, Operation Mincemeat stands as a testament to human ingenuity and the interplay of morality, strategy, and circumstance in war. Glyndwr Michael unwillingly became a deception linchpin. Montagu and Cholmondeley's foresight and precision executed audacious plans. The enemy, deceived by plausible evidence, contributed unknowingly to its disadvantage. Historians and military analysts study Mincemeat as a model of deception, inspiring films, books, and documentaries exploring its extraordinary circumstances and craft. Its appeal lies in tensions between ordinary life and strategic effect, ethical ambiguity and necessity, death's silence and historical resonance. As Mediterranean campaigns advanced, William Martin's shadow remained a quiet but decisive presence. Sicily's invasion, success, Axis collapse, and Italy's opening as a secondary front trace back in part to misinformation, identity construction, and a corpse's gamble. Mincemeat uniquely shows how a human body shaped armies and leader decisions at the highest level. Reflection invites contemplation on brilliance and human dimension, how individual lives intersect global events. Glyndwr Michael remains mostly anonymous, yet his role testifies to ingenuity, courage in shadows, and moral complexity in intelligence, war. Operation Mincemeat reveals history shaped by imagination, craft, and unexpected instruments influencing fate.